Far too often, especially in science, well, in any field, I suppose it doesn't matter about just science, but I'm talking about research and science here, we get convinced that the right way to do things is one way and the wrong way is another way, and we get caught up in this. And that just isn't true. That just isn't true. Here I'm showing you a 24-hour clock, and on it, you would want to go through and work out what your activity levels are. When do you sleep? When would you do research? When do you do exercise? Whatever the heck you want to do, and that's what you do with this 24-hour clock here. And the reason I'm talking about this is because so many people think they're night owls. So many people think they're night owls. And what they're basically saying is, I'm more active, I'm more clear-headed, I'm more capable of doing good science at night as opposed to the morning. So you see fewer early birds than night owls. And this may be the case, who knows? But I want to tell you here and now, there is no one way to be a good scientist. There's no one way. You got to find your way. The GERA Foundation presents this series called Navigating Research. This is Mozart's Clarinet Concerto. I have no idea. This is Beethoven's Fifth. These are two of the most renowned Western classical musicians of all time. And no one would deny that. No one. Now, I'm not a big fan of their music. I don't particularly like classical music. I actually don't like a lot of music. I don't generally listen to it. So I'm not a good judge of whether this is good or bad. No idea. Don't care. But no one will deny that these are two of the greatest composers in the Western world of all time. And they both live very different lifestyles, as you can see from their 24-hour clocks. Mozart was a bit more haphazard. He probably, because of his lifestyle, he had to make money to pay his way, so he gave lessons, stuff like this. But he did composing in the morning and the late evening, and he chased after women for several hours between what looks like 10 and 11 or 9 and 11. Can you imagine? And that's his lifestyle. Okay, good for him. He was a little different. Everybody's seen the movie. But Beethoven was the opposite. Very regimented character. He got up a certain amount of time, did whatever he was doing. Then he composed for 8 hours from what looks like 6:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. Then he would have a light dinner, go for a long, brisk walk. And when he made his coffee, I read something somewhere where it said he actually counted the number of beans he put into his coffee because it made the perfect coffee. That's how pedantic the man was. The man was just tried to be so precise. But again, these are two of the greatest composers, and yet they had two very different ways of doing their research, doing their craft. Now, the same can be said for most scientists. But this is an example of you do not have to do it all the same way. If you want to be artsy and you want to create the greatest compositions or the greatest pictures, it doesn't mean you have to wait till 3 in the morning and cut off one of your ears and paint. You could do it your way, which is get up at 6 a.m., paint, then go for a stroll, then go for dinner. Anyways, these are two of the greatest composers. Both lived contemporarily. I mean, they both came from Bonn and Vienna, very close to each other, Germany, Austria. And they may have even crossed paths. Mozart died when Beethoven was 21. Who knows? No idea. Anyways, but you can't argue that they did great works, and they did it very differently. And here's another example. Here's authors, basically, Charles Dickens and Charles Darwin. You can see they basically died within a year of each other. And again, their 24-hour clock tells a very different story about how they lived their lives. It seems that Dickens loved absolute quiet when he was writing, whereas Charles Darwin seemed to have lots of interruptions, taking his dog for a walk, making trips to a snuff jar. And sometimes he worked at night even doing things. So the point is that, again, another simple example of what we think is the right way or the wrong way is neither way. Your way is what matters. But one of the problems with regards to the night owl versus the early bird story, the night owl versus the early bird story is, are we being programmed? Are we being programmed to be this? So I would talk to many students and I would tell them, listen, you got to do what's good for you, what's good for whatever, and this is really important. So if everything in my life is telling me that all the exciting stuff is happening after 6 o'clock in the evening, maybe even after midnight, the nightlife, especially when you're younger and you want to go out with your friends and do lots of crazy things. Even when you're older, people think they want to relive their youth, whatever the hell that is. And so, this is examples of this. We have people from late night television, they're on to like 12, 1 in the morning. Here's nightlife in Busan, Korea, and here's some disco somewhere. Who the hell knows? And the point is that, as I'm saying, are we being programmed? Many people have done research that says, no, the brain works more efficiently, and I think it's an observational bias. I think they've done research to convince themselves this is the way it is. Well, if I spend my whole life getting up at exactly 8 o'clock, working for 8 hours, then partying with my buddies for 6 hours or 8 hours, what do you think I'm doing? I'm training myself to be something. So I think it's important that we all realize, what is the impact of our social lives on how we best operate. So that's what this is basically telling you. I think we're pre-programming ourselves to believe we're night owls. This is my 24-hour clock, and it's very easy to see that I'm an early bird. Not a night owl, no chance of that. Maybe when I was a grad student, I would be up all hours of the day doing research because you're put under constraint, you need to get done. I would work 24 hours, but I always found I'm best early in the morning. So, but this is me. I'm an early bird. You might not be. You might be, you don't know. Maybe you've been programmed to not think you're actually an early bird, but you really are. Whatever. But you got to do what's comfortable for you. Anyways, so the most important part about this is it feeds into what I call DOTI, diversity of thought and imagination. So what I'm talking about is, no two people are alike. No two fingerprints are alike. And so there's no such thing as zero diversity in any atmosphere. There's always diversity, always. But this is an example of something that nobody takes any interest in as it relates to metrics to determine diversity. Yes, coming from totally different cultures gives you a different perspective on solving problems. Very important. And I've done many videos where I talk about, in some places, when they count to 5 on their hand, they start with an open hand and they count backwards like this. Or you have a closed fist, you start with your thumb. They're all a solution to the same problem, counting to 5. Every culture will do it differently. And not every culture, but everywhere you go, you'll find people do it differently. So they see a problem a little different than you do. And that's a good thing. And that leads to diversity. But so does this. So does a 24-hour clock. My activity levels, where I'm most active, is a measure of diversity. It really is. And a simple example I always give. A simple example is the military. If you're in the military and you're on guard duty at midnight and you're a night owl, wonderful, great. You're alert, you're awake, you're protecting your comrades. Everything's going to work well. But that same person on duty at 6 a.m. is asleep, doesn't want to be there, is not alert. So in the military, to improve the efficiency of their organization, they would want to know who are night owls and who are early birds. Real simple. It keeps them safe, basically, in literally those terms. So diversity. So diversity comes in a myriad of metrics, but one of them is your activity level. Another will be the culture you grew up in, the environment you grew up in. If you're from the rural areas of a country versus the city, you think very differently. Your interests are different. You don't have the same distractions. You don't have the same whatever. And all of that will play into what it is. So if you're in a city that's awake 24 hours a day, well, then, or it's only awake from 6 p.m. to midnight, then you're gonna adjust your clock so that you fit into that. And the same would be true in the countryside. Generally, you go to bed when the sun sets. You get up when the sun rises. Why? Because in the old days, that's what you did. You didn't go out in the night because you couldn't see anything and you run into a tree, which I've done. It's annoying at the middle of the night, running into a tree. Anyways, I'm an early bird. You might not be, but I dare you to embrace your inner early bird. Maybe you are too. The GERA Foundation will produce more videos like this. Please like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this video.